Honglu knew that he, or rather the squad he led, was the variable for this final battle. The decisive factor would be Zheng and his clones' confrontation. Whoever first obtained victory between the two would make their team the final victor. A slightly less important decisive factor would be Xian's squad. If they managed to determine victory before Zheng and clone Zheng, they would be able to influence not just the two Zhengs battle, but the final battle's conclusion. Of course, there was an exception to everything. In this case, it was variables. Although this final battle's result would be determined by a few top-class powerhouses, Honglu's squad might be able to create an unimaginable impact and perhaps even change the final battle's conclusion as long as Honglu could perfectly grasp the hidden threads for the scheme Xian gave him. Of course, the most important thing to seize is the present and completely decimate the Angel Alliance and Team Devil's squad. Honglu needed his slightly aching forehead, continuing to look at that distant building. It was where the Angel Alliance had gathered. Lan couldn't gather the slightest bit of information inside with the interference of multiple Psyche Force users. In that case, Zero wasn't able to snipe inside. Their group wasn't able to get any nearer. Ignoring everything else, the many snipers in the Angel Alliance would be enough to kill them all. With both sides using Psyche Force screens, the only way to snipe was to use eyesight. Both sides had the same starting point, whether the Angel Alliance wanted to attack the invaders or Honglu wanted to use Zero's super long-distance sniping. Still, we have a special advantage. This standoff will be meaningless in a few minutes. Honglu said to the rest. Although they couldn't use Psyche Force scanning to observe the other party, the screened area still existed. A brief scan would clearly reveal the members of the other side's position, even if it was just the general location. That made the other side unable to move, unless there was a huge change in the situation. This huge change was exactly what Honglu was waiting for. Several minutes later, an indistinct black dot appeared in the horizon. It didn't seem to exist at first sight, and only those with extremely good eyesight could catch it. However, the black dot became clearer as time passed, revealing an intercontinental ballistic missile flying over. The Angel Alliance's Psyche Force users naturally scanned it, and everyone immediately became panicked. They all looked at Adam in unison, who was gently smiling with his eyes shut. They want to force us out with a nuke. That's a little too naive, is it not? Adam thought inwardly. He didn't believe the ones in charge of Team China were so naive. Even if they actually were, Xian would definitely have some way to taking advantage of this naivete to lay down a hidden scheme. He was sure there was something wrong with this missile, but he didn't know what it was for now. Or was there something else he had overlooked? Only two things can pose a danger to me. One is directly killing me, the second is an elimination of a majority of the Angel Alliance. Neither is possible with a nuke. Did I overthink it then? Is Team China's squad leader an idiot? Or is there a threat hidden somewhere I didn't notice? But, what is it? Adam's mind was moving at fast speed, coming up with dozens of possibilities in seconds. However, his movements weren't slow as he rose to his feet and said, "What are you all so stunned by? Those with super long distance attacks, immediately intercept the missile. Song Tian, you'll need to land the final blow if it gets into the danger range and still hasn't been destroyed. I request your aid, Psyche Force users. There's a weapon that can instantaneously kill any of Team China or Team Devil that attacks. It's a large-scale weapon that isn't restricted by God, but it needs large amounts of energy and people to participate. I hope everyone can give me a helping hand." Right, the weapon's name is the Complete Spear or Osiris, or, the Spear of Long Enus. It's a divine weapon that can pierce through the soul and energy. Everyone, apart from the few conspirators other than Adam, didn't know that the Human Instrumentality Project had begun. This was a project that could change the realm, or even break out of the box to reach the creator's level. It had finally begun silently and soundlessly in this building, while the ones from Team China and Team Devil's squads who were hidden were unaware that if it succeeded, they would surely die. Everyone in this world was included in that. Changing the topic from Adam starting Human Instrumentality Project, Honglu and the rest suddenly took out small bottles as the missile flew close by. They all broke it open and drank the liquid inside. At this moment, several giant fireballs and several shining projectiles shot out from the building. Their target was the nearing missile. Useless. If it was just a nuke, unless it was a direct hit, the shockwaves wouldn't be able to break through rank D and above protection, when it's from several kilometers in the air and from such a huge distance. With the standard of Team Celestial, no, the Angel Alliance, large-scale conventional human weapons can no longer pose a threat. Firing over a dozen super higher-yield hydrogen bombs at all regions may do the trick though. Still, my goal isn't a nuke. How could they flee? Honglu watched the attacks near the missile. Finally, a fireball struck the missile, and the missile blew apart without any power. There were no traces of any explosive warheads on the missile outside of its own fuel, let alone a nuke. Not even a highly explosive warhead was present. The remaining fireballs and shining objects collided, and the explosion became more violent. Still, no warhead explosion occurred even till the moment the entire missile turned to ashes. The missile didn't have a nuclear warhead then. What was the point of firing it then? For fun? That's not right. Something is inside that missile. Adam was currently inscribing a magic formation that wasn't too complex on the ground. The Spear of Osiris from the mummy was displayed within it. It wasn't a limited item in God's realm, with even Zheng having one. Anyone who went through the movie would have a certain chance of obtaining the weapon. However, no one would expect it was the spear that could pierce through the soul and body, the Spear of Long Enus. Correct. There are many copies of it. Everyone is real while fake at the same time. The spear is just a key. The saints and alchemists were afraid of their ruins being forgotten, or the item not being recoverable after the ruins were found. That's why so many were made. Perhaps, the spear that pierced Christ in history was one that circulated from the realm. This is why the spear isn't the actually unique thing. This was Adam's original words. At this point, Adam frankly didn't care if they could discern his intentions. They couldn't stop him even if they guessed it. The Human Instrumentality Project needed enough time to adapt to the surroundings and those it would absorb. This was its greatest flaw. Compared to that, obtaining the Spear of Osiris or the user needing to be the fourth stage in strength wasn't as important. At the same time, this Human Instrumentality Project was something definitely terrifying as the ultimate creation of the white race. It was unstoppable after it began, apart from the initial beginning where enough nutrients needed to be absorbed. It would be like the chain reaction between atoms in nuclear fission for the rest of the time. All life forms would become a part of this singular human, from as small as germs and viruses, to as great as fourth stagers or even fifth stagers. Even having light of the soul far stronger than the one undergoing the Human Instrumentality Project wouldn't stop it. It would only swap out the one undergoing it. This was the greatest weakness of Adam himself. He couldn't directly use the Human Instrumentality Project on the strongest like Zheng and his clone, or else he would become someone else's nutrients and disappear. That was why he had to carefully first absorb the light of the soul from large quantities of weaker life forms. He could only face the apex of the realm after strengthening himself to a great magnitude. Song Tian and the Angel Alliance were the best prey for him. When the merge began, the absorption of these people would be amazingly easy as long as he let the Tree of Life familiarize itself with these people's light of the soul and allowed it to slowly erode their light of the soul. Even if Song Tian was slightly stronger than him, it wouldn't affect him being the dominant one. That was why it was necessary to slowly wait in the early stages, or that final victory and instrumentality. Adam continuously searched for clues from the scan as he fiddled with the magic formation. The missile's explosion was too strange. It was definite that there was no warhead. If this warheadless missile was just to draw out the Angel Alliance's latent power, wouldn't one with a warhead be easier? One missile was useless as well. If they fired over 100 of them, some with warheads and some without, that would be much more threatening. In other words, something was definitely hidden within that missile. There's a 60% chance this missile has something hidden. There's another 40% this is all just to confuse me, the so-called stratagem of the empty city. They'll make me think there's something inside, while they quickly leave here to fight a decisive battle with the other side. No, there's a 50% chance of this. So, it's 50-50 in the end. Adam rubbed his temples that had swelled up slightly. He muttered to Song Tian who was besides him, should I thank Xian? The two Xians didn't personally come to deal with me, but deployed their team's members to die and increase my power. I really do have to thank him. But this does make me feel slightly regretful. As someone who's always considered him as my opponent, it seems he doesn't treat me as an opponent who can equal him even at the very end. It's always about maximizing benefits with him. He cares not one whit about the beauty in a battle of wits or a collision of schemes. He doesn't have an aesthetic bone in his body. He'll be delighted to research how he escapes danger and reverses defeat into victory if he falls into my hands. If I landed in his hands, hell absolutely take out his gun and immediately shoot me dead. That, or hell remove my brain for study before destroying my body. Song Tian looked indifferently at Adam who was chattering away. He suddenly interrupted, why are you suddenly saying all this? Do you have a bad premonition? Adam was stunned, before he gave a bitter smile. Call it a bad premonition or a sigh for the end of being a normal human. I'm about to stand on the same level as Chu Xian. No, it's one far surpassing where he stands now. After instrumentality, he'll become a god, and hell no longer be able to call me a mortal's wisdom. I really am weak. I keep remembering this past failure right at this important moment before my metamorphosis. Song Tian didn't say anything as he silently listened to Adam. When Adam was done, he said, walk down this path resolutely since it's the one you've chosen. In this, you are not Chu Xian's equal. He does not hesitate the slightest in his heart, nor does he carry any burdens. Each and every action points to his intent. He only purely seeks a maximization of benefits. Perhaps, you'll understand his realm when you have his thinking and memories. Perhaps. Everyone, well stay here. But prepare for battle. We can annihilate these invaders as soon as this weapon is activated. Adam took out the Spear of Osiris as he spoke. He pinched the tiny spear, and it extended into its true form as a long spear in an instant. He then inserted it into the center of the formation, the spearhead pointing upwards. When this was done, he gave a smile to the various Psyche Force users around. Do help. Infuse your Psyche Force into this alchemical formation. Those with higher mental capacities, do help as well. Stand in those 13 circles around. The Psyche Force users all exchanged a look, before walking over one by one. When Sarawi walked past, Mayatakariki grabbed her hand. Be careful. I don't know why, but I have a bad premonition. Something is about to happen. Sarawi nodded seriously. She was aware that Mayatakarik's technique was quite unique. It was one of the few that allowed the user to experience light of the soul before the fourth stage. The user would rate as the strongest among those at the same level of genetic constraint and technique, if that regrettable imperfection of self-harm was ignored. This technique was quite sensitive towards unknown danger, or in other words, Had a strong sixth sense. You be careful too. Saraoi said gently. She gave Mayatakariki a few silent looks before walking to the formation's giant circle. Mayatakariki was also one of those with a better mental capacity, and stood there as well. His bad premonition intensified as soon as he stepped into it. He couldn't resist asking, Adam, is this formation dangerous? Why do I? A bad premonition, is it? Adam looked up at Mayatakariki, before looking at the rest. Anyone with a better mental capacity would have a particularly strong sixth sense. They could for the most part have some mental warning in the face of mortal danger. This was especially so for these Psyche Force users who had even stronger premonitions. Adam smiled. Of course it's dangerous. Any weapon or skill with great power would have this danger or limitation. I think you all should understand this. That's why I need 13 people to share this danger with me. As the eye of the formation, I bear the greatest danger. Don't worry, everyone. Everyone all relaxed. Although some had doubts, they could only stand there without making a noise due to the stress from Team China and Team Devil outside. They watched as Adam entered the formation and placed both his hands on the spear of Osiris. Ha! You're that fellow who wanted to join the Zeo Mountain sect, but didn't succeed as your potential was too low? I seem to recall something about that. Yinglong looked at the man stepping on a sword, his face filled with surprise. It wasn't faked, as he had indeed heard from his master about someone also from another world who had sought apprenticeship just like him. Unfortunately, his lineage hadn't been pure AMD, he had been from another race. His master had thus used the matter of potential to fob him off. Otherwise, the realm might have had another true cultivator appear. The other man really did have the appearance of having sword-like brows and star-like eyes. That together with his manner of dress made him seem like a cultivator even more than Yinglong. He was immediately enraged upon hearing that. Shut up. My capabilities and aptitude are tens of thousands of times yours. On what grounds was I rejected, while you were accepted? It must have been you Chinese and your narrow-minded thinking making trouble. You all fobbed me off because I'm a mixed blood. Damn you. Ho ho ho, Yinglong wasn't polite and directly nodded his head in confirmation. That's exactly it. If you want an explanation, why not you go back to your homeland and ask them to disseminate their top technologies to the world for no compensation? Remember, it's for no compensation. I'll return to my master if so and ask him to accept one more. But do you think it's possible? I don't need to say too much about how the Dao shouldn't be lightly transmitted, right? What a laughable reason. Narrow-mindedness. Then, are all those who file for patents like this then? The man on the sword's face was flushed from anger. He roared, your skill with your mouth proves nothing. If you have the skills to back it up, well use our fists to determine who's the real deal. Hee, doesn't it happen often with you Chinese? The things you invent can't be the best, while it's instead brought to the greatest of heights in our hands. I want to see how strong you, the one and only cultivator, actually is. Are you actually 100 times stronger than me who self-cultivated? Yinglong laughed coldly continuously. With a wave of his hand, the azure sword he was stepping on actually magically produced another sword that he held in his hand. He drew a pattern in the air with his new sword as he spoke, I already said come at me from at the start. The faster we fight the faster I can be on my way. Damn it. All the strongest of Team China only think about fighting with Team Devil. They just ignore Adam. Your Team Devil's Xian is a madman as well. Don't they know the danger Adam poses now? No, they know, they just don't care. I still have to do it myself in the end. I'll deal with you quickly. I need to be off. The man on a sword's face was completely green by now. He howled, then come. A new sword was produced by the azure sword beneath his feet as well, which he grasped too. Not bad. You actually managed to learn the illusory sword art by yourself. You don't seem to be in the nascent soul stage, though. Yinglong laughed coldly. However, as he looked on, surprise gradually showed on his face. The sword in the man on a sword's hand was different from Yinglong's. To be accurate, it seemed to be illusory, while Yinglong seemed to be more real. Not only that, but the man's sword was formed from countless electrical runes densely packed together. However, the density of refined chi paled in comparison to Yinglong's, which was what gave it that illusory look. This technique of transforming refined chi into an illusory sword was an immortal sword art. It was one of the best techniques for showing the user's power. The weakest cultivators usually couldn't even have an illusory phantom appear, while the strongest could affect the area for kilometers around with a simple wave of the sword. The illusory sword Yinglong could form from his dense refined chi was incomparably mighty, with him being highly accomplished within his nascent soul stage. Even so, he had never come across converting refined chi into electrical runes first before joining those together into a sword. Was this sword not formed from pure refined chi? The purer, the stronger. The purer, the stronger? The man on a sword roared with laughter. He seemed quite refreshed upon seeing Yinglong's faint bewilderment. That's what my cultivation manual said. The purer the refined chi, the mightier. Bullshit. You Chinese are always so inflexible, never daring to change what you've invented. In their hands, outsiders have frequently managed to explore its potential far better. It was like that with the compass, it was like that with gunpowder. Now, it's even so for cultivation. Haha. Yinglong's face gradually turned colder. An invisible pressure enveloped the surroundings with a flick of his sword, before he said, is it the rune technology Xian modified for you? Although my cultivation techniques are from the orthodox school, they have the large regrettable imperfection of lacking a portion of the most important rune technology. This portion is with Team China's Xian. I didn't expect Clone Xian to have it too. Come. You piqued my interest now. Let's see if the genuine and complete cultivation techniques really do have the power to destroy the heavens and earth. I'm waiting expectantly. The man on a sword had actually used a trick. His immortal sword arts had indeed been modified by Clone Xian. However, it hadn't been through rune technology, but using high technology exchanged from God as the main foundation. Although it was still technology, it lacked the word rune in it, giving it a completely different connotation. There was a large gap whether in power or duration. The man on a sword was well aware of this fact. The super virus in the city would soon spread here as well. He had neither reached the 4th stage, nor had he reached the nascent soul stage that no disease could infect. A long battle was to his disadvantage, so he immediately threw his electrical rune sword into the sky without another word. It instantly broke apart, and the electrical runes that filled the sky spread in all directions in a seemingly chaotic manner. However, its path of flight had a unique trajectory. The electrical runes formed into a net of refined chi over a kilometer in diameter within seconds. 13 strange electrical life forms were stationed at the periphery of the net. However, the net looked rather indistinct due to the relative weakness of the man on a sword. Ah, you can deploy the 13 Blood Fiends formation despite not being at the nascent soul stage. I did underestimate you before. Yinglong was still slightly scornful in his heart, although he had heard before that cultivation techniques were but one small inconsequential part of the cultivation system and there were still rune technologies such as weapon refining, pill refining, rune formations, etc. Those were the true incarnation of cultivation as compared to the techniques that could only raise personal strength. However, Yinglong didn't expect that this formation with rune technology added would be a lower grade 13 Blood Fiends formation. It was weaker than the 8 trigrams formation, the 4 cardinals formation and even the Taiji formation, not to mention the cauldron of the 8 trigrams or 12 evil gods formation that needed treasures to set up. To him, breaking this formation wouldn't even need his technique of borrowing from the force of heaven and earth. Just as Yinglong raised his sword aloft to prepare to attack, the man on a sword suddenly spat out blood. He used his teeth to bite his tongue, while he stomped down continuously with his hair disheveled. This fellow actually planned to risk his life from the very start of the fight. This posture gave Yinglong a fright, and he didn't dare act careless as he threw out a flag. The palm-sized flag expanded to a size of a dozen meters before protecting him within. Unfortunately, this flag isn't comparable to those 8 flags, the cauldron of the 8 trigrams. Speaking of which, it seems to still be with Zheng. At this moment, there was the crackling of electricity from the flag protecting him as streams of electricity streaked past repeatedly. In the formation these electrical runes made up, a violent current visible to the eyes could be seen. This 13 Blood Fiends formation was completely different from the one Yinglong knew of. Pure refined chi had been converted to electricity. Instead of summoning 13 Blood Fiends with different appearances to attack as it should do, electricity appeared instead. However, how strong it was exactly wasn't known. The man on a sword ignored Yinglong's flag. His feet moved in the 8 trigram step style as his hands executed some hand seals continuously. A faint azure light shone around his body as the 13 Blood Fiends suddenly took shape. One that looked like a giant bat flapped its wings, giving a giant screech as it pounced on Yinglong. Electricity arced on the body of the Blood Fiend that had become matter, the colors of blood red and shining white continuously intersecting, adding on to its imposing manner. Yinglong had a giant flag protecting him outside. He didn't dodge it as he had the intention of testing out this true cultivation technique that had been perfected through rune technology. He took the Blood Fiend's pounce head on. A bloody light and electrical light exploded upon collision. In the end, it was the bat that shattered into electrical runes, while the flag wasn't even scorched. It seemed this 13 Blood Fiends formation hadn't become matchless after the inclusion of rune technology. Some confidence immediately brewed in Yinglong's heart. As he was about to mock the man on a sword, the 12 Blood Fiends that hadn't dissipated yet pounced all at once. He didn't have the leisure to talk too much. At the same time, the man on a sword left the heart of the formation. He directed his attention elsewhere as he took out over a dozen dark-hulled metal pieces and flung them up into the sky. Yinglong was currently butchering those Blood Fiends, sword in hand. Although the flag prevented any injuries, he still had to consume quite some refined chi to kill them. He couldn't possibly just slam into them every time, right? So, he was tied up by the Blood Fiends for a while. He couldn't tell what the man on a sword was doing although he could see it. Borrowing the force of heaven and earth, Heaven Deo becomes lightning, the man urgently chanted. The azure light on him had already dimmed much, and his refined chi was obviously running on fumes. His other killer move other than the 13 Blood Fiends formation should be the metal pieces he threw out before. In that moment, Yinglong had already slaughtered the 13 Blood Fiends. He didn't hold back, destroying the formation with a wave of the flag. When he was about to whirl the flag towards the man on a sword, the man spat out blood again. The already dim azure light brightened again, while an incomparably acute golden radiance shone in the sky. It was as if a dozen suns had been added in an instant. Lo Yinglong. I ask you, do you dare receive my 18 purple gold celestial lightning? The man asked with some slight feebleness. Screw you. Do you think I'm some kind of moron? I'm just going to let you hit me like some main character from a novel? Yinglong gave the man a sidelong glance, raising his hand as he flung the azure sword out. It slashed towards the man's head like an azure lightning bolt. However, it was still a sword in the end and not an actual lightning bolt. A purple gold lightning bolt descended from the sky before the sword could cut the man. It turned the sword formed from refined chi into nothingness as it slammed into the sword with a boom. 18 sparkling golden machines appeared in the sky at this moment. They were satellite-shaped, and were positioned in a strange formation. They constantly shifted their positions. There were even traces of electrical runes on their bodies. They were obviously built from those electrical runes made from refined chi. That's not rune technology. That's mechanical technology. Yu Yinglong stared dumbly at the sky, taking a long time before he shouted. However, without waiting for him, the man abruptly swung his hand down. The 18 satellites began to draw in the lightning within the cloud layer, converting it into the purple gold lightning as it sent the lightning crashing down. 18 thick bolts merged together in mid-air, and an enormous pillar of lightning crashed into Yinglong's protective flag, knocking him deep underground in the blink of an eye. This process is what is known as karmic retribution. He knocked Gondo down first, and someone knocked him down this time. The man began to pant as he recalled what Clone Xian had said to him once before. You don't have complete cultivation techniques, nor do you even have a teacher. Your cultivation is more like a skill than an actual set of techniques. In other words, you will never surpass Luo Yinglong in cultivation. There's only one way left. You have to take those pure cultivation techniques, and view it purely as a tool. For example, you could just look at refined chi as an energy source, and it'll be an incredibly powerful source of energy. If you use your mind or consciousness as the controlling equipment, it'll be like an artificial intelligence countless times more advanced than any computer. It'll create some cultivation battle gear for you. It'll be similar to those magic treasures, but it'll be using scientific methods to work. Refined chi will be the energy source while your mind and consciousness will be directing it. Draw in a large amount of natural power to attack the enemy, then using yourself as a conductor, give the enemy a fatal blow. The man raised his head towards the sky. There was an imperceptible sigh as he said, Lil sis, you should get the medicine I left for you soon. If Chu Xian does it, your illness can live. Live blissfully in the real world, my Lil sis. Luo. Ying. Luo. I may not have your orthodox cultivation techniques, but I won't ever lose to you. A life for a life. The man pointed at the sky again. The 18 satellites began to draw in electricity once again. However, the direction of the lightning was instead the man. It all occurred in a moment. Endless azure light poured out from the underground hole Yinglong had been smashed into as the lightning struck the man. He didn't dodge it as he used his body to endure the strikes. The incomparably mighty lightning was absorbed into the man's body like flowing water. At the same time, the man was using his sword to rush into that underground hole. My mission has been accomplished, Chu Xian. Fulfill your promise. There was a loud rumble as if a nuclear missile had gone off in the hold as the area for kilometers around was swallowed up. As an explosion abruptly rang out in the distance, Imhotep transformed back from stand and stood atop a large building to look at the distance. He didn't know what sort of battle was going on there. Lightning continuously bombarded the ground, looking very abnormal, horrifying. That person from before should have fled in this direction, right? Why isn't there the slightest presence left? Imhotep returned his attention back from the explosion. The person he had been chasing had come to the road here. Although he didn't know how strong he was, how could anyone who stayed at Clone Xian's side at this juncture be weak? So, he had chased just this person, ignoring the rest. His spells were large-scale attacks anyways, and he couldn't display his full power if his teammates were around anyways. He would be able to freely turn into sand or cast spells if he was fighting alone. I don't know how Aang Sunamun is. Her strength is too weak in this realm. I'm not with her either now. I better quickly finish off this fellow and hurry over to help them. Imhotep considered repeatedly in his heart. At this moment, an invisible pressure suddenly descended from the sky. The roof he was standing on was immediately pulverized for an area of several meters. He was crushed into sand and dust along with the concrete. It didn't end there, as the pressure increased in intensity, and the scope expanded. At this moment, a small whirlwind appeared at the spot where Imhotep had been crushed, and it carried away sand and dust which gradually formed into the face in the sky. Imhotep, was it? A Chinese youth was standing on the nearby street, obviously the old member of Team China, Hao Tian. He gave a bitter smile. Do you know why I lured you so far away? That's where two Xians are fighting. I perused your information. The undead magician from the mummy, was it? You may not die if you're there, but me? Definitely gonna die. Imhotep felt slightly awkward in his heart. It really was so when he thought about it. One Xian was enough to drive a person crazy. Two Xians fighting, it was best to run as far as possible. Although he could transform into sand, who knew if that weirdo Xian wouldn't some special move, like a handheld magic cannon? Alright. Let's cut down on the talking. Let me quickly kill you. I'm in a rush. The enormous face of sand said. It drew in all the sand and dust from the roof into its mouth as if it had inhaled. Within a few seconds, it spat it all back out in the form of a sandstorm, a dense cloud that covered the sky and blotted out the sun. Ah, it's like a movie. Hao Tian seemed to have the natural disposition of always being relaxed. He had been relaxed right up to when Xian killed him in Team China. He simply chuckled upon seeing the sandstorm, rushing towards the wall of the building besides him. He somehow managed to race up the wall as if he had no weight, defying gravity. He was also incredibly fast. He had already shot up to over 10 floors up by the time the sandstorm reached him. It didn't take long before he had reached the roof. So troublesome. I had a choice but I just couldn't make a good one. I just had to choose the guy who can shapeshift as he wants. Pure physical attacks are meaningless and the effect of Psyche Force attacks are halved. Only energy or light of the soul may have some effect. How depressing. I managed to get a light of the soul of the 4th stage so difficultly, but I ended up meeting this guy. Looks like I won't even have the strength left to run after winning. Hao Tian gave another bitter smile as the sandstorm reformed into a face again. Imhotep bellowed, fleeing. Where could you flee to? Let me kill you quickly. Of course to somewhere the Xian's fight won't spread to. I also have to escape the area of those two abnormal Zhengs fight air. Why am I talking you so much to you? Okay. Imhotep, I've come to bargain. Let me run, and I'll tell you where the Zhengs are fighting. Deal. Hao Tian said helplessly as he looked at the sand face that was flying towards him. Stop joking before the words could finish. Hao Tian raised a hand, and an incandescent golden light struck out. The sand face immediately disintegrated as if it had been struck by a hammer. It had floated to dozens of meters away by the time it reformed. How depressing. I had always thought my light of the soul would be something economical and energy-saving, or even the most convenient telekinesis. I didn't expect it to be an advanced product of telekinesis. It's powerful, but so energy-intensive. I can't use it fully until I'm the mid-4th stage. It's holy light, and I suspect many of those termed angels possessed it. Hao Tian waved his hands forcefully, and golden radiance gushed out from his body. It covered him within like a barrier, and he began to float up slowly and stand in mid-air nonchalantly. Hao Tian raised his hand, and a golden ball floated up from his hand. He casually tossed it out, before giving it a violent kick towards the sand face. The golden ball shot towards the face with incredible speed. In the instant they came into contact, the ball exploded, the golden light shining for kilometers around. It was so piercing that anyone looking on would be forced to shut their eyes. Enraged bellows could be faintly heard from the sand face. When the light weakened in intensity, not a trace of the face could be seen. Imhotep, I know you're fine. I've seen your sword of life form quite a few times in Team Devil. It's nothing more than one type of battle weapon the ancient saints modified. It's even only mid-tier. It's just your will and light of the soul being eternal, and your physical body and external matter not constraining you much. That attack just now didn't harm your light of the soul, so stop hiding. Come out and face me openly. I'm in a rush. Hao Tian shouted without even thinking about it. In a corner of the surrounding ruins, Imhotep's face had turned green. He was very gloomy inside. He had been loudly demanding for battle before, but sometime, the tables had turned and he was the one hiding now. That golden light before had actually harmed him quite a bit. In that instant, he had felt like even his soul was being attacked. If he hadn't made the prompt decision to abandon his sand form and borrow the form change to escape here, he would have suffered heavy injuries. It's time to risk it then. It's the final battle anyways, so I'll stake my life. As soon as he entered the realm, Imhotep could be considered as a powerfully unique person. He was the main character of a movie after all, something that people from the real world naturally couldn't compare to. He had also gone through so many battles in Team China. Although he had given most of his points and rank rewards to Ang Sunamuan, he had still managed to find techniques suitable for himself. Although he hadn't been learning it for long, he had no choice but to stake his life on it and try it now. The Suna no me. Just as Imhotep used all his power to risk his life in battle, Chang Xiao was jumping in joy on his side. He was fighting a pretty young girl in traditional Chinese clothes. Although she was on the delicate side, it made people more fond of her. She was obviously a budding beauty who had just left her lowly years and hadn't become a young woman yet. Fight with me. Why are you running so fast? The girl was moving from rooftop to rooftop of the tall buildings. She was very light-footed, easily covering 100 meters with each jump. Chang Xiao's expression was turning green. He completely ignored the girl as he continuously raced down the street. Hey. I'm talking to you. You're not mute, are you? The girl finally couldn't endure it. She leapt to Chang Xiao's front, finally blocking him. She asked him with a displeased and peculiar tone. That expression of hers was enough to tempt any man. Chang Xiao's face was cold. He looked at the pretty young girl and said, once upon a time, I, Chang Xiao, swore that I would never hit a girl. You don't hit girls? Hee. Good, good. So, just stand there and let me kill you. The girl giggled upon hearing it. She raised her hand as if she was about to attack. No, Chang Xiao hurriedly shook his head. I will never hit a girl or anything non-male, damn. I won't engage in hand-to-hand with a ladyboy. You just had to become a ladyboy of all things. The girl's entire body suddenly shook. Tears filled her eyes, and she lowered her head as if she had suffered a grievance. But I have the heart of a girl inside, although my body is, you can't humiliate me this way. How did you find out? Ignoring everything else, this girl's external appearance was one beautiful enough that it was rarely found even among 10,000 people. Together with her alluring actions and expression, she was definitely a stunner although she looked young apart from his gender. Chang Xiao coldly harumphed, pointing at the girl, or rather, the 14 or 15 years old boy. Who am I? I'm Chang Xiao. From 8 to 80. One look. One listen. That's all I need to determine their gender. What do you think a pervert is then? It's only like this then you can be called a pervert. The young girl was trembling all over, standing there dumbly just like a computer that crashed. After a long while, she crouched down as if she had been beaten, continuously muttering to herself, "Impossible, impossible. Wahaha. Understand. A pervert's dignity doesn't allow me to fight with a ladyboy. So, scram." Chang Xiao roared with laughter, running away again. The girl was silent for a while before she shouted in a tender voice, "You damned pervert. Who are you calling a ladyboy?" "I said, I have the heart of a girl. Anyways, want no one know as long as I just kill you." Hee, the girl began to laugh, chasing after Chang Xiao with a relaxed expression. When she was a kilometer from him, she raised a hand. An invisible wind blade slashed at Chang Xiao. The over 10-meter long blade cleaved through a row of buildings in its path, its power not reducing in the slightest. Just as it was about to hit, the man suddenly flipped his body over and escaped, twisting in midair with a strange posture. When he was standing again, the wind blade had already passed his previous position. "Ho, looks like you're not just any ordinary pervert. That's why, as I said, Team China is no matter what the people who can rival us. You're not weak." The girl giggled. She even played with her hair as she spoke. Any man who wasn't in the know would have been beguiled upon seeing it. It really was an outstanding ladyboy. Chang Xiao looked at the girl, or accurately, the cross-dresser. When he had met her, his heart had been moved, especially upon seeing the silk stockings and beautiful legs under that short skirt of hers. It wasn't enough to call it a physiological reaction. But when he had found out she was a cross-dresser, he had very nearly become permanently impotent. There was no choice but to flee without even fighting in order to escape that eternal blemish of having had a physiological reaction. And in his heart, he could no longer bear to fight this ladyboy. It wasn't the fondness for the fairer sex, but just a subconscious desire to not damage something beautiful. "Hee, are you staring at my legs again?" "Right, I'm wearing garters and some sexy underwear, want to see?" The ladyboy saw that Chang Xiao was staring at her, and she pursed her lips in a smile, before using her hand to lift the edges of her skirt slightly. The slender and well-proportioned legs really were rarely seen beautiful legs. "Damn cross-dresser, beating you half to death isn't counted as fighting hand-to-hand with a ladyboy, right?" Chang Xiao bellowed in rage. He walked towards her, his genetic constraint unlocking continuously at the same time. All his attention was focused on the girl before him. Her lips pursed into a smile once more, and she began to float off the ground with a wave of her hands. Small whirlwinds which pulled her up were visible around her, while her short skirt was blown by the winds. As expected, there really was a sexy underwear of translucent gauze under the skirt, along with black garters on her waist. This scene would have made Chang Xiao's eyes pop out if not for her gender. Chang Xiao was instead enraged upon seeing this, roaring, "Don't you dare humiliate the sacrosanct sexy underwear and garters in my heart. Just you wait, you ladyboy." She no longer said another word. She was 7 or 8 meters off the ground. She waved a single hand towards Chang Xiao, who was accelerating towards her. A wind blade not weaker than the one before attacked, reaching Chang Xiao in an instant. Unexpectedly, he jumped up once again, twisting strangely as he stuck to the blade. It was just like how the waterfowl his technique was named after brushed against water as the wind blade passed him and struck the distance by the time he had stabilized his footing. "Wow. Amazing. How did Big Brother do it?" Her eyes lit up as she asked Chang Xiao with veneration. "I'm the ancestor of playing with wind. My Nanto Sucho Ken, why am I telling you this? Scram, or let me send you flying. Make your choice." Chang Xiao chuckled twice before waking up to reality and shouting. The cross-dresser curled her lips, muttering, "How boring. I wanted to tease Big Brother a little. I haven't met someone so interesting in so long. But it seems I have to hurry up. This place will probably become that weirdo Xian's battlefield soon. If I'm still here then." "Weirdo Xian." Chang Xiao understood what she meant. He had hurriedly escaped just now, partly because he didn't want to fight with this stunning cross-dresser, but mostly because he wanted to escape the scope of Xian's fight. There were 2 Xians there. A handheld magic cannon, a simplified planetary bomb, world-destroying pistols or something might appear. He wasn't called Doraemon for nothing. When one Xian met another, it wasn't a simple addition of 1 + 1 = 2, but more like 100 to the power of 100. Anyways, he had to run away as best as he could. "Big bro, I'm going to go all out, k. Right, my enhancement is the Kaze no Mi. I'm quite strong when it's together with the energy stone bracelets Xian made for me." "You want to go all out?" "Exactly as I wanted. Let's finish this fast." Chang Xiao exhaled a breath, as he took out the gauntlets Xian had made for him. He slowly put them on. The Nanto Sucho Ken wasn't considered a very strong technique, but any technique's power was determined by the user's strength and application. He had no reason to lose this battle. He couldn't lose either. "Zhang Heng. Stay there. Die with me." Clone Yanwei's voice incessantly sounded from behind. She was giving chase on the street while carrying a giant shining bow. The shine wasn't limited to the bow, but her body as well. It multiplied her speed by over 10-fold, making her look like a human-shaped race car racing down the road. Far in front of her, Heng was giving his all to run. His body was covered in a green light, unlike Clone Yanwei. He had long since learned the method to spread the elven energy in a nightmare on Elm Street. He could freely use it after undergoing countless training since then. However, the first time he used it, it ended up being for running instead of the passionate battle he had been expecting. "Not running!" Heng shouted. It's to avoid the Xian's battle. You saw it right? Those buildings just collapsed for no reason. Do you think you can survive there? The distant clone Yanwei was silent, before shouting, then we'll die together. I won't let you die alone this time. But we can live on together? Why must we die? Hung replied as he ran. You coward. Clone Yanwei was already so enraged that she no longer knew what to say. She raised her bow and shot an arrow. 2 streets separated Hung and her, with innumerable buildings on them, but she didn't have any psyche force scanning or any other observation skills. This arrow seemed to just be her venting, but the radiant arrow pierced through multiple buildings, landing on the ground right in front of Hung. If he had been just slightly faster and ran another few meters, it would have struck him. She seemed to have precognition. She followed the flow of fate to fire arrows that hit the enemy. Precognition. Hung sighed as he halted his steps. However, he continued to run forward at a much greater speed than before seconds later. This action immediately led Clone Yanwei to start scolding loudly again. Hung couldn't help but maintain a bitter smile. He was indeed running, but his core reason was to safeguard Clone Yanwei. First, it was because of the Xian's battle. Secondly, their battle would definitely lead to one of them dead, or even both, especially with her current mental state. I'll run faster. When we're at a safe place, I'll wait for her to calm down a bit before I talk to her. Unfortunately, this was all Hung's personal guess. Clone Yanwei instead got more enraged the more she ran. She couldn't resist sending out several arrows, the last of which just grazed the tip of Hung's nose and forced him to stop. The distance from the Xians was enough already. Most importantly, Clone Yanwei had reached her maximum level of anger. Finally stopped, you coward. Die with me. Clone Yanwei reached him within 10 seconds. Without saying another word, she raised her bow and pointed at Hung, seeming about to immediately fire an arrow. Hung smiled bitterly. He knew that she didn't actually need to get so close to kill anyone with her special precognition. It was an arrow of fate, that completely predicted your next move and capable of shooting the location you moved into. It was practically the highest realm possible for snipers and archers. I can't die with you. I want to live on now. Yanwei, let's live on together. Hung helplessly shrugged his shoulders, before saying seriously to Clone Yanwei. Are you humiliating me? Clone Yanwei's face flushed with anger. She didn't wait for Hung's reply as she shot an arrow at his face. However, its speed and power wasn't great, and he easily dodged to the side. It seemed Clone Yanwei hadn't been intending to land a killing blow right at the start. Listen to me, Hung hurriedly gestured with his hands. I'm no longer the past me. Death is just running away. No mistake is unredeemable, so why not live on to atone, until the day I die of old age? Isn't that fine? Live on. Together with me. Clone Yanwei was stunned. Her bow fell slightly, before she abruptly raised it again and pointed it at him, slowly saying, You think we can return to our relationship in the past? No, we no longer can from the moment you ran, or the moment you and I died later on, as well as everything we've experienced in the realm Zhangheng, we can't return to the past. That's why, let's die together. Well, finally be peaceful then. Nothing will ever break us apart then. Everything that's past will be reset to zero. You're not even listening to me. Hung felt very gloomy. He kept gesturing in an attempt to express something, but in his anxiousness he wasn't able to explain anything without Xian or Hunglu's intelligence. At the same time, he felt a chill run through his body. That was because a true killing intent finally leaked from Clone Yanwei. He hadn't sensed such a thing when he met her in Resident Evil Apocalypse. It seemed that she had experienced many life and death trials since then. It also showed that she had made the decision to die together with him since seeing his suicide that time. For what purpose is this torment necessary? Hung shook his head. After calming down his mind, he said, I already revived the you from Team China. She didn't let me die together with her, so you too. She's her. I'm me. Do you really think I'm still the Ming Yanwei in your heart? No, we can't return, so let's die. Clone Yanwei seemed to have made her decision, or breathed a sigh of relief. She gradually closed her eyes as she spoke, before her hand relaxed, and an arrow of light was loosed. The direction of the arrow was strange. It didn't seem to target Hung, instead being slightly higher than Hung's head, looking very strange. However, alarm bells rang in Hung's mind, honed by a long period of life and death trials. He didn't hesitate to roll to the side. Unsurprisingly, not a second after that, a large billboard above came crashing down, shattering noisily. However, pain flared in his leg as he rolled away when an arrow of light pierced his right leg. Clone Yanwei had fired an arrow at where he was rolling to, which happened to enter his right calf. Your precognition? Hung grimaced in pain, exhaling several times as he slowly stood up to ask Clone Yanwei. She didn't say anything, an arrow of light knocking on the bowstring when she drew back the bow of light with trembling hands. Hung would definitely die when she loosed it. At this critical juncture, the trembling in her hands was a window to the agitation in her heart. Yanwei, I understand. It's naive to expect to bring you of Team Devil away without doing anything. Law of the jungle, was it? Team Devil embracing it can't be said to not be correct, but that doesn't mean it's right. Yanwei. I'll bring you away after beating you. Don't worry, I'll only knock you out. I'm sorry. I promised the other you to live on courageously. My comrades are still fighting too. I must help them. Hung exhaled when he finished. He picked up his newly exchanged serious bow, instead of that silver metal bow. Although this bow was completely not comparable compared to the silver bow in terms of power, it still held a special significance to him. Their first battle and first death, this bow would end the final battle. He had to stake his life to face her. Clone Yanwei looked at Hung with surprise. When Hung held the serious bow in his hands, an astonishing aura emanated from him that even few from Team Devil had. It was the sort of aura only formed from the tempering from endless blood and fire. Not just that, but the determination to give up your life was needed too. In Clone Yanwei's memories, his childhood experiences had bred a sort of cowardice in him. However, someone cowardly would never have this sort of aura. Unknowingly, this person had already grown up into a man. My lover, it's too late already. If you had had this determination and aura then, you wouldn't have run at that time, there are no ifs. Let's go to hell together, my lover. My lover, I can't die yet with you. I've experienced too much. I understand now that death is just an escape. Real courage is facing it. That's why, let's live on to face it together, my lover. Hung knocked several arrows at the same time, before drawing the serious bow fully, aiming it straight at Clone Yanwei. He only this woman in his eyes. It was the eyes of one who had never been able to move forward and would no longer retreat, the eyes of a true man. Yanwei, I don't have your precognition, Xian's intelligence, or Zheng's power. I only have my bow and arrows, as well as the archery techniques I've constantly comprehended. Come, my lover. It's getting late. So, let's die together. The two released their bowstrings. There was only each other in their eyes, as well as those arrows that never stopped eating up the distance.